I didn't think a memorial would be where my career almost ended. Not the funeral itself, the company one. The kind with a catered reception, a printed program, and a carefully chosen piano track playing through cheap speakers. The kind where executives talk about family while checking their watches, and everyone else stands quietly because that's what you're supposed to do. It was for Evan Ruiz, compliance, 42 years old, died in a hotel room during a vendor conference. Official cause, heart attack. Unofficial explanation, stress. The kind of word companies use when they don't want to ask harder questions. I arrived early, not because I was eager, but because Evan deserved at least that much. The auditorium smelled like flowers and coffee. His photo was already on the screen behind the podium. Him smiling with his kids, cropped perfectly to fit next to the company logo. It felt wrong, like his life had been formatted to match brand guidelines. People filtered in slowly, heads down, quiet voices, that specific corporate grief where everyone is sad, but not sad enough to disrupt operations. Then my boss walked in late. Derek Haynes, Vice President of Operations. Perfect suit, perfect posture, the kind of man who never rushed, even when everyone else waited. He scanned the room the way he scanned meetings, looking for leverage. His eyes landed on me. He didn't wave, didn't nod. He walked straight down the aisle and stopped beside my row. He leaned in close like he was sharing a secret. After this, he said, voice low and calm, you're going to your desk, you're packing your things, and you're leaving. At first, I honestly didn't understand. I turned slightly. Sorry, what? His expression didn't change. You're done here. No explanation, no paperwork, no HR. Just an instruction delivered under a photo of a dead colleague. I felt a tightness in my chest, but my voice stayed steady. Are you firing me? He smiled. I'm ending a problem. The piano music swelled on the speakers. People were taking their seats. A slide with Evan's name faded in and out behind us. You're doing this now? I asked. At a memorial? Derek straightened a little, glancing toward the stage. We'll keep it quiet. No scene. Something about that made my stomach turn. Not just that he was firing me, but that he'd chosen this place, this moment, when no one would interfere, when everyone would look away. I asked one question. Is legal aware you're doing this? For the first time, his smile tightened. Legal will back me, he said. You should be more concerned about your own exposure. Exposure. That word didn't belong there, not in a normal termination. It wasn't about performance. It wasn't even about behavior. It was about risk. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me staring at the stage as the CEO stepped up to the microphone and began talking about integrity, teamwork, and Evan's commitment to doing things the right way. I barely heard her, because pieces were already lining up in my head. 3 days earlier, Derek had asked me, by email, for full admin access to the procurement analytics dashboard. Not read only. Full export rights. I'd refused. Politely. In writing. There were controls in place for a reason. Evan had supported that decision. Evan had been the one insisting we document irregularities we were seeing with a preferred vendor. Purchase orders split just under review thresholds. Again and again. Not dramatic fraud. Just quiet, systematic avoidance. Evan had said, let's loop in internal audit. That meeting never happened. Now Evan was dead, and Derek was firing me without process, in the quietest room he could find. The CEO asked everyone to stand for a moment of silence. I stood with everyone else, hands folded, eyes forward, and in that silence I realized something clearly, without panic or anger. Derek wasn't removing me because I'd failed. He was removing me before someone else asked the wrong question. The silence ended. People sat. Applause followed. Soft, respectful, automatic. I didn't clap. I didn't leave either. Because whatever Derek thought he was burying that afternoon, he'd chosen the wrong person to do it to. And the memorial wasn't the end of the story. It was where it started. I didn't leave after the memorial. Derek stood near the side exit, watching people file out, already acting like the decision was done. Like I'd obey quietly because the room had decided to be peaceful. I walked past him toward my desk. He noticed. "You didn't hear me?" he said, loud enough for me to hear, low enough for no one else to pay attention. "I heard you," I replied. "You didn't document it." That annoyed him more than anger would have. Anger is easy to dismiss. Calm isn't. My desk was exactly the way I'd left it that morning. Monitor asleep. Coffee cup half full. A normal day waiting for me to pretend nothing had happened. I didn't start packing. I sat down and logged in. My credentials still worked. That told me everything. If legal had approved anything, my access would have been gone already. This wasn't a process. It was a shove, hoping momentum would do the rest. I opened my email and searched one word, Northgate. The thread appeared immediately. Derek's request from 3 days earlier. Full administrative access. No justification beyond, I need visibility. My reply sat underneath it, time-stamped and polite, explaining that executive-level access required legal and audit approval. Evan had replied after that, one line. Simple. "Good call. Let's hold the line." I swallowed. Then I searched another word. Threshold. Evan's messages came up again. Notes about purchase orders broken into smaller chunks. Always just under the review limit. Always the same vendor. Always approved quickly. At the time, it felt like diligence. Now it felt like motive. I leaned back in my chair and watched people moving outside my cubicle. Quiet, subdued, carrying grief like a temporary badge. No one was looking at me. Derek had counted on that. That's when I remembered the external drive in my backpack. I didn't carry it for secrecy. I carried it because my job involved site visits, vendor walkthroughs, long days without reliable network access. No one ever questioned it. Evan had once said, half joking, "Backups are the difference between proof and regret." I opened the restricted folder we'd built together. Access limited, logged, monitored. The reconciliation file was there, exactly where we'd left it. Before copying anything, I checked the access logs. Evan hadn't touched it since the week before he died. No one else had either. I exported the latest version and encrypted it. The system recorded the action. I didn't hide it. I didn't need to. Transparency was my only shield. Then I stood up and went to HR. Monica, our HR business partner, looked up when I entered. She already knew why I was there. You could tell by the way she'd straightened the papers on her desk, preparing for impact. "Derek mentioned you might stop by," she said carefully. "Then this should be quick," I replied. "Has HR initiated a termination for me?" She hesitated. "I don't have anything finalized." "Finalized implies something exists," I said. "Does it?" Her eyes flicked to her screen. "Not yet." "So HR hasn't terminated me," I said. "Derek instructed me to leave anyway, at the memorial." Her mouth tightened. "He said there were concerns." "Concerns are discussed," I said. "Terminations are documented. I'm asking you to note that I'm available for any meeting with HR and legal, and that I'm not resigning." She typed slowly. Each keystroke felt loud. "I'll note it," she said. "One more thing," I added. "Please record that this instruction was delivered during the company memorial." She stopped typing, looked at me, then she nodded. "Okay." I left HR and went back to my desk. Derek was waiting. "You enjoying the tour?" he asked. "I spoke to HR," I said. "They don't have a termination on record." His jaw tightened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said. "I'm making it slower. There's a difference." He stepped closer. "You think Evan's death gives you cover?" "That's not what this is about. You built files with him," he said, lowering his voice. "Files that don't belong to you." I looked at him carefully. "If they don't belong to me, why are you asking for access?" For a split second he froze. Then he recovered. "Legal has questions," he said, "and you're going to answer them after you pack your things." The threat was poorly timed, because if legal truly had questions, This conversation wouldn't be happening in a hallway, and if Derek were confident, he wouldn't be rushing. I watched him walk away, irritation barely contained. And that's when it clicked. He wasn't firing me because I was a problem. He was trying to remove me before someone else realized I was the witness. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost him everything. The meeting invite arrived at 5:17 p.m. No subject line, no agenda. Just a calendar block and a room number, 9B. Attendees listed me, Derek, Monica from HR, and Laura Chen, General Counsel. That combination told me this wasn't a conversation. It was an attempt to control the narrative. I didn't rush. I didn't delay. I walked to conference room 9B like someone who expected to be questioned, not cornered. Laura was already there when I arrived. She sat at the end of the table with a legal pad and a pen aligned perfectly along the edge. Calm posture, no small talk. The kind of presence that doesn't need volume to dominate a room. Monica sat beside her, hands folded too tightly. Derek stood near the window, arms crossed, staring out like this was already beneath him. "Thanks for joining," Laura said as I took a seat. "I'll be direct." That was the first moment I felt something shift. She wasn't here to perform. "We're reviewing procurement irregularities related to Northgate facilities," she continued. As part of that review, we identified a reconciliation file created by compliance. Evan Ruiz had access. "So did you," Derek jumped in before I could respond. "And we believe Andrew exported restricted data without authorization." There it was. Clean, simple, designed to land. Laura didn't look at Derek. She looked at me. "Did you export the file?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Monica inhaled sharply, like she'd expected denial. Derek smiled, just a little, like the room had finally cooperated. Laura's pen moved. "When?" "Today?" I replied. "After Derek instructed me to pack my things and leave, without HR documentation." The smile vanished. Laura turned her head slowly toward Derek. "You told him to leave today?" "Yes," Derek said, defensive now. "For risk containment." "At the memorial," Laura added. "It was efficient," he said. Laura wrote something down. She didn't argue. She didn't need to. She looked back at me. "Why did you export the file?" "Because Evan told me to keep it off network if anything happened," I said. "And because Derek requested full administrative access to the procurement dashboard 3 days ago. I refused. In writing." Derek scoffed. "That's irrelevant." Laura's pen stopped midline. "It may not be." The air in the room changed, not dramatically but decisively. This was no longer Derek driving. It was legal evaluating risk in real time. "Do you have proof of the access request?" Laura asked. "Yes." "And the reconciliation file?" "Yes." She nodded once. "Send me both, from your company email. And if you have an external copy, preserve it." Preserve. That word matters. It doesn't belong in performance meetings. It belongs in investigations. Derek leaned forward. "This is getting out of hand. Evan was creating unofficial logs. He wasn't authorized." "Derek," Laura said without raising her voice. "Stop." The room went silent. Monica stared at the table. Laura turned back to me. "Did you ever share this file externally?" "No." "Did you modify it after Evan's death?" "No." "Was anyone else aware of it besides you and Evan?" "Yes, internal audit had access." That landed hard. Laura wrote again. Slower this time. Derek straightened. "This is becoming a witch hunt." Laura finally looked at him fully. "No, this is becoming documented." She closed her pad. "Andrew, you're being placed on paid administrative leave effective immediately. This is not disciplinary. It's procedural." Derek opened his mouth. Laura held up a finger. "Derek, this is not optional." She turned back to me. "Do not access systems. Do not contact vendors. If anyone reaches out to you about this matter, redirect them to legal." I nodded. As I stood to leave, Laura added one more thing. Quiet, deliberate. "Thank you for not deleting anything." That sentence stayed with me, because it told me she'd already seen cases like this, and that Derek wasn't the first executive to try to bury a problem by removing the witness. I walked out of the building carrying nothing but my backpack. No box, no escort, no scene. Just the understanding that the ground had shifted. That night, lying awake, I replayed Derek's words from the memorial. You should be more concerned about your own exposure. I finally understood what he'd meant. He wasn't warning me. He was projecting. And for the first time since Evan died, the weight in my chest wasn't grief. It was clarity. Because once you realize you're not the target, but the obstacle, everything changes. The email arrived the next morning at 8:06 a.m. Subject line, administrative leave. Paid. Effective immediately. Access suspended. Do not contact vendors. Do not discuss the investigation. Standard language. Neutral. Almost gentle. But I knew what it really was. Containment. Not of me, but of the damage. Within an hour, my phone started vibrating. A message from Ray in finance. You okay? A Slack ping from Priya on my team, sent before my access vanished completely. Legal just asked for your process docs. What's going on? Even Sam from IT texted. They pulled Derek's admin rights. That never happens unless legal orders it. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I didn't want to. Because every response created risk. For me and for the case. Derek had lived by shortcuts. I wasn't going to lose by taking one. Late that afternoon, Laura called. No small talk, no pleasantries. We've begun formal interviews, she said. This will take time. I understand. There's something you should know, she continued. Derek attempted to frame your export as unilateral misconduct. I closed my eyes for a moment. I assumed he would. He claimed you acted out of panic after Evan's death. And your refusal email undermines that, she said. So does the audit trail. I exhaled slowly. Not relief. Focus. Northgate invoices are under review, Laura added. We're seeing purchase orders splitting across multiple quarters, just under review thresholds. Exactly what Evan had flagged. Approvals trace back to Derek, she continued, using an executive exception code. Minimal justification, repeated use. That was no longer gray, that was pattern. What happens now, I asked. Now we expand the scope, she replied, and we lock down access. The call ended. 2 days passed in strange silence. When you're on leave like that, time stretches. You're neither employed nor unemployed, just waiting. Then on the third morning, my calendar buzzed. Company update, live stream. I clicked the link from my kitchen table. The CEO stood on the same stage where Evan's memorial had been held. Same lighting, same corporate calm. The irony didn't escape me. We're committed to accountability, she said, and to the highest standards of governance. Then she paused. Effective immediately, Derek Haynes is no longer with the company. The chat feed beside the video froze for half a second. Then messages flooded in. Shock, speculation, half-formed truths. The CEO continued. An independent review of vendor management practices is underway. She didn't say Evan's name. Companies rarely admit they ignored someone until it was too late. 10 minutes after the live stream ended, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text message. You think you won. You're still exposed. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then I deleted it. Because the message told me everything. Derek wasn't confident. He was afraid. That night, Laura called again. Board has been briefed, she said. External auditors are involved. Regulators may follow. And me? I asked. There was a pause, short but deliberate. You did what you were supposed to do, she said. You documented. You refused improper access. You preserved evidence. That was the closest thing to validation I expected from legal. As the call ended, I sat alone in my apartment, the city quiet outside the window. For the first time since the memorial, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not triumph, something steadier. Because chaos isn't loud when it's real, it's methodical, it's procedural, its emails and permissions disappearing one by one. And somewhere in the middle of that quiet unraveling, I realized something Derek never understood. You don't lose power when people talk. You lose it when the records start answering questions you hope no one would ask. A week later, Laura asked me to come in. Not through the main entrance. Not with a badge swipe or a calendar invite that could be forwarded. Just a short email with a time and a note. This is procedural. I understood what that meant. The building felt different when I walked in, quieter. Not because people were whispering, but because something heavy had already moved through and settled. Laura was waiting in a small conference room with the blinds closed. Monica from HR sat beside her, posture rigid, like she'd rehearsed what she wanted to say and still wasn't sure it mattered. Laura didn't waste time. Your administrative leave is lifted, she said. Your access will be restored under revised controls. There will be no adverse action against you related to this matter. I nodded. I didn't thank her. This wasn't kindness. It was correction. Monica spoke next, voice tight. The attempt to terminate you has been formally documented as improper. That record won't disappear. That mattered more than an apology. Laura slid a folder across the table. Inside was a letter, formal, restrained, signed by the CEO. It confirmed my reinstatement, compensation for the leave period, and legal protections for my cooperation. Another page followed. The company was suspending its contract with Northgate. An external audit firm had been engaged. Certain invoices were being clawed back. The board had approved new procurement controls. The words were dry. The consequences were not. Derek's separation wasn't voluntary, Laura said, as if reading a weather report. His counsel has been notified. We're responding to regulatory inquiries as required. As required. That phrase meant the truth had crossed a threshold where silence was no longer an option. I hesitated, then asked the question that had stayed with me since the memorial. Did he do it on purpose? I asked that. Fire me there, in that room. Laura met my eyes. Yes. No explanation, no cushioning. He believed the setting would suppress resistance, she continued. He believed you wouldn't challenge him in a memorial. I looked down at the folder, at the signatures, at the outcome. He misjudged, I said. Laura nodded once. He did. I returned to work the following Monday. No announcement, no emails about my return. People noticed anyway. They always do. Some avoided eye contact. Others offered quiet nods. A few stopped me in the hallway just to say, I'm glad you're back, without asking why I'd been gone. I went to my desk, logged in, and opened the procurement dashboard. Then I rebuilt it, with legal involved, with audit watching, with controls that couldn't be overridden quietly or explained away later. The reconciliation file Evan and I had built, the one Derek tried to erase, became the foundation of the new system. No hidden spreadsheets, no executive shortcuts, no thresholds gamed in silence. The auditorium doors stayed closed most days after that. But every time I walked past them, I remembered how Derek had chosen that room because he thought grief would keep everyone still. He was wrong, because silence doesn't protect power. Structure does. And the moment he tried to bury me in a place meant for respect, he stopped being my boss. He became a liability. Everything ended cleanly. No loose threads. No unanswered questions. Just records, decisions, and consequences that followed logic instead of fear. And when I finally left the building that evening, I didn't feel angry. I felt something better. Calm. Because I hadn't survived by being loud or clever. I survived by standing still, letting the truth do what it always does. Wait patiently for the moment it's needed.